Before we begin, how are you feeling tonight? Is it late where you are? Or perhaps early morning is just settling in? Wherever you're listening from, in the quiet corners of a big city, a softly lit countryside home, or tucked away in a cozy apartment high above the world, know that you're welcome here. Feel free to share where you're tuning in from the comments. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these gentle historical explorations that wander into the forgotten past, consider liking this video and subscribing. It truly helps this quiet little corner of storytelling grow. Now let's settle in together. Adjust your pillow, let your body relax, and allow the tension to slowly melt away from your day. Tonight, we'll drift gently into the strange and often grim world of ancient healing, when pain was seen not just as a symptom, but sometimes as the cure. Let your eyes soften, your breath deepen, and picture this. It's dusk in a small village nestled along the banks of the Nile, thousands of years ago. The air is warm, still, and carries the faint scent of resin, dried herbs, and river silt. Clay homes line the edge of the water, and smoke from small cooking fires curls upward, slow and silvery. Inside a quiet hut, a healer prepares for her first visitor of the evening. She wraps her shawl tighter around her shoulders and grinds a pungent mix of frankincense, myrrh, and red ochre, whispering an incantation under her breath. A man enters, limping, face twisted in discomfort. His tooth, infected and angry, has kept him awake for days. There are no dentists here, no anesthesia, no sterile tools, just copper instruments, chants, and the healer's experienced hands. He kneels before her, bracing himself, while she selects a sharp reed and a bronze pick. This is medicine, and this is pain. Again, imagine the flickering light of oil lamps casting slow-moving shadows on clay walls, the sound of grinding pestles, the earthy tang of powdered herbs rising in the air. Imagine a world where healing was entwined with ritual, where the body was a battlefield for spirits, humors, and unseen forces. Have you ever wondered what it was like to trust your life to those early hands, trembling not from uncertainty, but from reverence? Tonight, we'll walk those ancient paths one step at a time through civilizations that bled for knowledge. Egypt, Greece, Rome, India, and beyond. We'll uncover remedies carved in a stone, whispered through generations, and etched forever into the bones of the healed and the broken. So rest easy. Let the images form softly behind your eyes. Let your breath settle, your thoughts slow. The past is opening before you, not with shouts or alarms, but with whispers, the kind that linger gently in the dark, waiting to be heard. That let's drift now to ancient Mesopotamia, where the cradle of civilization cradled, to some of the earliest attempts at healing the human body, where sickness was never just physical but spiritual, a punishment or possession, or the result of some celestial imbalance. Imagine yourself walking slowly through the winding alleys of UR, the mud brick streets warm beneath your feet from the late day sun. The sky is fading into a rich bronze, and lanterns begin to flicker awake. Somewhere in a humble corner of the city, a man lies trembling inside a reed hut, writhing from fever and pain. His family believes he is cursed, and so they call for an asipu, a priest healer, the bridge between the mortal and the divine. He arrives not with clean white robes, but with incantation tablets, oil jars, and a heart full of ritual. He presses clay amulets into the patient's palm, chants ancient phrases passed down through generations, and prepares a treatment not of science, but of deep belief. A mix of crushed turtle shell, river mud, and dates is prepared and placed over boils and open sores, not because it cures in the modern sense, but because it draws the sickness out, coaxing demons away with the stink of sulfur and animal bile. And while you lie there, You might hear the priest whisper, Shamash, light of the world, drive this darkness from the body. Again, imagine the taste of dust in the air, the low hum of sacred chants, the way pain and healing blur together beneath the flicker of torchlight. Back then, healing was not fast. It was not kind, but it was everything they had. In moments of agony, sharp reeds would be used to pierce abscesses. Heated stones would be pressed to the skin to burn out evil spirits, and mixtures of honey and ash might be packed into wounds, stinging and seething, meant to cauterize infection with divine fire. Have you ever considered what courage it took to submit yourself to such rituals, not knowing if you'd wake cured, or simply wake at all? Mesopotamians believed that illness flowed from the gods as a message. It could be read in the stars, in the liver of a sacrificed goat, or in the pattern of your dreams. Pain was a form of communication, a language written across the body. And through the pain, perhaps they believed the gods were listening. So again, picture that tiny mud brick room, the flickering flame, the scent of sage smoke curling toward the stars, and the cool, rhythmic voice of the asipal lulling the sick back toward the light, or gently into the next world. The treatments were hard. The beliefs were deeper. But the hope, the same hope we carry today, that pain might one day end, that has always been with us. Let that thought settle. Let it quiet your mind as we move forward in time, into even stranger realms of ancient medicine. Now, let your thoughts drift slowly, like a silk thread unraveling through time, guiding you eastward into the vast and ancient world of Egypt, where medicine was both sacred and severe, where healing was inscribed in tombs and whispered in the chambers of stone temples. Picture the banks of the Nile in the early dawn, dew clinging to the reeds, and the cool mist rising as fishermen cast their nets. In a nearby village, nestled among palm-shaded courtyards, a child cries out from the pain of an infected wound, his legs swollen and red, hot to the touch. His mother, wrapped in linen, kneels beside him and pleads for help. And soon as WNW, a physician priest trained in the House of Life, arrives. He brings not only herbs and blades, but prayers, for in Egypt, healing was as much the domain of Thoth and Sekhmet as it was of poultices and procedures. Imagine this healer bending over the child, softly humming a chant as he unwraps bundles of honey, moldy bread, and animal grease, ingredients meant to cleanse and draw out the evil. The wound is washed with wine or vinegar, and then, with a bronze scalpel heated over flame, he cuts, slowly, precisely, into the flesh. No anesthetic, no numbing balm, only the chanting of sacred names to distract from the searing pain. And still, the family watches silently, knowing that such suffering is the path to survival. Again, picture the sharp sting, the warmth of blood, the way pain blurs the corners of your vision. BSWNW does not flinch. He has seen worse. In other corners of Egypt, dislocated joints were set by brute force. Two men holding down a patient while a third twisted the limb back into place with a sickening crack. For those with eye infections, needles were used to lance pustules near the tear ducts, while crushed minerals, lapis, malachite, were ground into paste and smeared along the lids. Beauty and torture mixed together like oil and water. For toothaches, one of the most agonizing afflictions, remedies included stuffing the mouth with onion and powdered incense, or even, when pain persisted, pulling the tooth with crude forceps, often in the open air beneath the hot sun. And then, of course, there was trepanation, the cutting of a hole in the skull to release illness, madness, or spirits. Though rare, when performed, it was done with a steady hand and bone-carving tools that scraped away the cranium in slow, patient circles. Imagine lying still, surrounded by the scent of burnt myrrh and the slow, rhythmic chants of temple acolytes, as pain flickers and waves through your spine. Again, let the image return to you. A stone table, a bronze blade, a child's whimper, a healer's ancient song. Egyptian medicine, for all its cruelty, was astonishingly advanced. Diagnoses were written in hieratic script, and medical papyri listed hundreds of treatments and anatomical terms. And still, suffering was part of the process. There were no easy cures. Every cut was sacred, every burn a prayer. They believed that disease entered through the mouth or rose from the Nile's wet breath. And so they treated it with what they knew, with honey and resin, and sometimes with fire. And all the while, behind the pain, there was reverence, a quiet trust that the gods watched over even the most painful incisions. So now, breathe deeply. Let the waters of the Nile roll past your thoughts. Let the pain of the past grow distant and soft. You are safe here, watching shadows flicker against temple walls, hearing the echo of sandals on stone. As the stars rise over the black earth of Kemet, close your eyes and feel the world slow. Now, with the gentle hush of the Nile behind us, let us drift further across the ancient world and step softly into the lands of classical Greece, where olive groves sway under the sun and marble statues catch the golden light of dawn, silent witnesses to the early struggles of medicine. Imagine walking through a bustling agora in Athens, where merchants call out and philosophers debate. Yet somewhere, tucked in a quieter corner, a patient lies stretched on a worn bed of straw within a humble home or a rudimentary healing temple. The scent of olive oil and smoke lingers in the air. His leg is broken, swollen, and bent, and it is here that a healer trained in the traditions of Hippocrates prepares to set the bone. The tools are few: linen strips, wooden splints, perhaps wine for cleansing and dulling the senses, though it's not enough. Pain is inevitable. The healer's fingers are steady, his voice calm, repeating quiet instructions and reassurances in low tones. The limb is pulled taut, slowly, excruciatingly, and then pushed back into place with a sickening crunch. The scream is swallowed into the thick stone walls. Again, the process begins. Splints are tied, tightly wrapped, and the injured man is left to recover with only herbal pastes and warm compresses to ease the torment that follows. Can you feel the strain in his breath? The way his body stiffens with every pulse of pain? Greek medicine, revered for its philosophy and logic, still relied heavily on rudimentary tools and the raw endurance of the human body. Take, for example, the treatment of bladder stones, common among men in ancient times. Without anesthesia or antiseptic, a surgical procedure known as lithotomy was performed. Imagine lying on a stone slab while your legs are tied and lifted, your lower body exposed. A sharp, hooked instrument is inserted into the urethra, probing until the stone is located, and then, without delay or distraction, the surgeon cuts deep, often blindly, to extract it. The pain is blinding, white-hot, and unbearable. Some survived. Many did not. Again, envision that moment. The gasp of the patient, the glint of iron and firelight, the trembling hands of the assistant holding him down. Elsewhere, cauterization was a favored method to stop bleeding and burn out disease. A rod heated until it glowed orange was pressed directly onto open wounds, sometimes into ulcers or boils, the flesh hissing and writhing under the heat. Even for minor infections, searing the skin was thought to purify it. And so, once again, the body endured the unbearable in hope of healing. There were even treatments involving scarification, making controlled cuts across the skin to release toxins, sometimes combined with strange concoctions of vinegar, garlic, and ground metal that stung and blistered. For those afflicted with epilepsy or mental disturbances, trepanation, drilling a hole into the skull, was not uncommon. The idea, echoed from earlier civilizations, was that evil spirits or excess humors needed release. A small circular cut was made into the cranium using bronze or iron tools, and no matter how still the patient lay, pain bloomed like fire in the nerves. Yet, to the Greeks, such suffering was a doorway to restoration. The physician's role was divine, and pain was the body's test. In the background of all this, women, especially midwives, played a crucial role. During childbirth, pain was seen not just as natural but necessary. No sedatives, no comfort, just rhythmic breathing, strong arms to brace against, and the whispered prayers to Eileithyia, goddess of labor. Picture it now. A darkened room, the flicker of a single oil lamp, a mother's cry cutting through the night as the midwife massages her belly with warm oils, urging the baby forward. If the birth stalled, tools would be used. Curved bronze hooks or forceps, crude and cold. Sometimes, to save the mother, the infant would be dismembered in the womb. The choice between life and death, made in flickering torchlight. Again, allow the image to settle. Stone walls, warm oil, sharp iron, pain echoing like thunder across generations. The Greeks gave us language for illness, for prognosis, for ethics, and healing. But beneath that wisdom, pain was ever present, loud, physical, and endured in silence. Let that thought rest with you as your breathing slows. Imagine lying beneath a fig tree on a hillside overlooking the blue Aegean, and let the heat of the sun soothe your bones. The wind hums through the leaves, and the past, heavy with wounds and whispered chants, begins to fade behind the veil of sleep. Close your eyes now. The pain was real, the healing brutal, and yet, somehow, life always carried forward, one breath, one heartbeat, one hope at a time. Now, as you rest in the quiet hush of history, let us drift gently eastward to the ancient lands of India and China, where healing traditions were rich with ritual, belief, and deep knowledge, yet not spared from excruciating remedies. Imagine the early dawn mist rolling over a riverbank in the Ganges Valley, soft chanting echoing from temple courtyards, the scent of sandalwood curling upward in the air. In this sacred stillness, an ancient Ayurvedic healer prepares a patient for surgery. Yes, surgery, recorded as early as 600 BCE in the texts of Sushruta, who is often called the father of surgery. The patient, eyes wide with fear, lies flat upon a woven mat. The healer's assistant holds him still. There are no anesthetics, only herbal sedatives, perhaps a bitter paste of cannabis or dachira rubbed across the tongue. The procedure? A cataract removal, done not with laser precision, but with a curved, sharp probe made of metal. The healer pierces the eye delicately, yet unmistakably, pushing the clouded lens downward to settle at the bottom of the eye chamber. No stitching, no sterile tools, just steady hands and ancient trust. The pain must be blinding, the world swirling in blur and panic. Yet the patient lies motionless, teeth gritted, as holy mantras are whispered in a rhythmic tone. Again, let yourself see it. The bronze tool gleaming faintly, the flickering light of butter lamps, the steady hand of the surgeon, the trembling breath of the one who endures. And this was but one of many procedures in the Ayurvedic texts. Cauterization of wounds with burning ghee, the surgical excision of anal fistulas, even the use of leeches and insects to clean necrotic tissue. These practices, rooted in a balance of bodily humors, dashas, combine the spiritual and the physical in every incision. Let the imagery settle. Fire-heated metal pressed to skin, antiseptics brewed from neem and turmeric, the body trembling under divine chants and the sting of primitive blades. Now shift your mind to the dynasties of ancient China, where soft silk robes whisper against tiled floors and medicinal scrolls unfold with delicate brushstrokes. Here, pain was not merely battled, it was studied. Yet even the most profound philosophies of qi and energy meridians could not avoid the sharp edges of ancient treatment. Consider the practice of cupping in its early form. Horns heated by flame, quickly pressed onto the skin to draw out bad humors or spirits. The suction would break capillaries, swelling the skin into painful, bulbous blisters. The patient would lie motionless, listening to the soft hiss of steam and the rhythmic crackling of wood, the heat blooming across their back like fire. Or imagine the cold stillness of an acupuncture chamber. Yes, calm now, but in some early practices, needles were thick and long, made of sharpened bone or bronze. They were driven deep into muscle, sometimes rotated painfully, even used to bleed stubborn ailments from the body. Again, gently recall this picture. The silent doctor in flowing robes, carefully placing each needle in the skin already tight with fear. The needles shimmer in lamplight, and the patient's fingers clench into the bedding below. And then, in cases of extreme illness, there was moxibustion, the burning of dried mugwort directly on the skin, often near acupuncture points. Smoldering cones of herbs placed on bare skin, allowed to burn down until the flesh blistered. The pain, sharp and hot, was believed to drive away internal demons and cold qi. Again, feel the rhythm of it: fire, ash, skin, breath, pain. Treatments for madness or convulsions were not gentler. In some cases, chains were used, or the person was left exposed to the elements to drive out the wind believed to possess them. And always, herbal mixtures, bittersweet, pungent, sometimes toxic, were forced down, brewed from bark, horn, root, or bile. Still, the Chinese healers, like their Indian counterparts, pursued a delicate balance, seeking to harmonize body and spirit even as they relied on methods that, to our modern sensibilities, feel deeply cruel. Yet for them, pain was a bridge, not a wall, a necessary crossing toward healing. Let your mind rest now in the echo of temple bells, the gentle rustle of bamboo leaves, the low murmur of a healer's chant as they place a warm poultice over an aching limb. It is evening in the mountains now. The wind carries the scent of rain. Close your eyes and drift in the rhythm of old wisdom. Burning herbs, carved instruments, sacred chants, and the strength of bodies long gone who bore suffering in silence. All in the hope of one more day, one more meal, one more breath beneath the sky. Let us continue now, gently drifting across time once more. Far west, to the ancient lands of Mesopotamia and Egypt, where civilization's first cities rose alongside the slow, winding rivers of the Tigris, Euphrates, and Nile. The sun glows amber over mud brick homes, casting long shadows where healers once practiced their art under the watchful gaze of gods and spirits. In Babylon, medicine was both science and sorcery, a blend of potions, prayers, and incantations scribed on clay tablets with a stylus made of reed. Imagine the small, dusty room of an Asipu, a priest healer, who kneels before a sick man lying on a reed mat. His skin is pale, sweat beading on his brow. The healer chants softly in Sumerian, calling upon divine favor while preparing a treatment that stings more than it soothes. Poultices of mashed garlic and sulfur are pressed onto an infected wound, bubbling and burning against raw skin. The pain was thought to drive out demons of illness, malevolent spirits believed to inhabit the body like unseen parasites. There were no antiseptics as we know them, only sharp knives, salt, and belief. Now picture the Egyptians, lovers of order and ritual, in their candle-lit medical chambers, where the smell of honey, myrrh, and resin thickened the air. Their papyrus scrolls, like the Ebers and Edwin Smith, listed treatments both refined and brutal. For a dislocated shoulder, the practitioner would use the Hippocratic method, wrenching the arm in a violent tug and twist to force it back into place. Imagine the sudden pop, the searing ache, and the patient's muffled scream echoing off limestone walls. Even more harrowing were their remedies for dental problems. Yes, they had early dentists, SWW as they were called, but without anesthesia, a rotten tooth might be chiseled out with a bronze instrument. Sometimes the tooth wasn't removed at all. Instead, the inflamed gum was sliced open to drain the infection, the blood mixing with powdered minerals and herbs. Again, picture it slowly. A man holding his jaw, trembling, his mouth filled with bitterness and blood, while a healer calmly stirs a mixture of crushed insects and wine. And for wounds that festered, the Egyptians used cauterization, burning the tissue with hot metal or oil to seal and sterilize. The scent of scorched flesh lingered like an offering to the gods. There was also a firm belief that some pains had divine origins, so treatment included not just physical remedies but also amulets, incantations, and offerings to appease angry spirits. A mother grieving the fevered cries of her child might offer bread and beer at the temple of Sekhmet, goddess of plagues, whispering prayers into the dark. Again, imagine this mother under the stars, clutching a worn token, her voice soft and breaking, while her child shivers inside. In these ancient worlds, pain was not always fought. It was endured, honored, and folded into the rhythms of daily life. Even the embalming process, though done after death, tells us of how the body was handled in life. Sliced open, organs removed, brain pulled through the nostrils with a hook, the body filled with natron salts that leached out every drop of moisture. A practice not of cruelty, but of reverence. Still, one wonders, how much did they learn from death that they apply to life? Again, gently bring your focus to the quiet rituals of healing in a land of sand and sun, oils rubbed into aching joints, the slow murmur of Nile water, the careful wrapping of linen around wounds, and the patient sighs of those who knew that healing, in their time, often began with pain. The night grows deeper now. Let your breathing slow, like the turning of the stars above the pyramids. Let your thoughts rest alongside those of ancient hands, who held pain not with fear, but with faith. Now, let us slowly tread forward into the world of ancient Greece, a place where olive trees swayed gently under the weight of sun-warmed air, and where philosophy, science, and the human body were studied with reverence and awe. The great minds of Hippocrates and Galen shaped medicine into a discipline of observation, logic, and intervention. But even with their intellectual advancements, the treatments could still be deeply agonizing. Picture the white limestone of a small healing temple on the island of Kos. There, a patient lies on a rough linen bed in the cool shadows of an Asclepion, a sacred place of healing. He is preparing for trepanation, an early form of brain surgery involving the drilling of a hole into the skull to release pressure, bad spirits, or madness. The physician's tools are laid out: bronze chisels, sharp blades, and a hand-power drill that whines with each turn. The patient may have been given wine or opium to dull the senses, but he is awake, restrained gently by cloth and firm hands. The sound of the drill grating into bone echoes through the silent chamber, a slow, circular grind that vibrates through the jaw and eyes. Again, picture it: the cold bronze against warm flesh, the blur of torchlight above, and the rhythmic breathing of the healer. Steady, focused, almost prayerful. Greek medicine believed in balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, and pain was often seen as the body's cry for equilibrium. To treat imbalance, physicians performed bloodletting using leeches or incisions near the veins. The process was delicate, but the result was always the same: a slow stream of warm blood pooling into a shallow dish, leaving the patient pale, dizzy, and depleted. The more pain, the more proof of cleansing. For fevers, the body was scalded with steam or covered in plaster masks of vinegar and herbs, the smell pungent and invasive. Skin infections were cauterized with burning rods. Swollen joints? They were wrapped in leather and pounded gently with stones to restore alignment. Imagine a woman, limping from an arthritic hip, led into a shaded room where a healer begins tapping her bones with calculated strikes, the pain blooming like fire, then fading, then blooming again. There are treatments for blindness too. The Greek physician Aetius of Amida once described a procedure in which a sharp needle was inserted into the eye to break up cataracts, scraping the lens while the patient sat rigid and silent, eyes wide and glistening in fear. And yet, many submitted willingly, whispering the names of gods, trusting the knowledge passed down through generations. Even surgical procedures, such as amputations, were conducted with little more than cloth to bite down on and wine to dull the senses. Limbs were cut swiftly with curved blades, and the stumps were cauterized with fire or sealed with honey and linen. The room would have smelled of iron, ash, and blood, an atmosphere of agony and hope intertwined. Still, there was gentleness in some practices. Massage, warm oils, and healing baths were common prescriptions, with slow, rhythmic rubbing and whispered reassurances. In the gardens outside, patients would rest beneath fig trees, listening to the hum of cicadas and the trickle of water from marble fountains, recovering under the open sky. They believed that healing was not only physical, but deeply spiritual, that the gods, especially Asclepios, the divine healer, would visit them in dreams and guide the physician's hands. Again, can you feel the contrast? The brutal cut of a knife balanced by the softness of lavender oil on the temples. Pain and peace danced closely in this world. And so, as we drift here among amphoras and scrolls, among chants and scalpels, we begin to see how ancient pain was managed, not denied, but shaped into meaning. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the waves that lap the shores of these distant lands. Let your thoughts quiet as the sun sets behind the Acropolis. You are not in the hands of cruelty, but of an era earnestly trying to understand the human body in all its mysterious, aching beauty. And now, dear traveler, we gently leave the marbled courtyards of Greece and drift eastward through golden deserts and dusty winds until we arrive in ancient India, where Ayurvedic medicine flourished long before the modern world had a name for surgery. Here, in the dim glow of oil lamps, where incense coils in the air like drifting thought, healers known as Vaidya practiced their sacred art. They believed that all illness came from imbalances within the dashas, Veda, Pitta, and Kapha, forces that ruled the body and spirit. Imagine a small rural healing room made of clay, cooled by wet cloth and shaded from the sun. In the center, a patient reclines on a reed mat, prepared for nasotherapy, a treatment where medicated oils are slowly poured into the nostrils to cleanse the sinuses and brain. The sensation is burning and bitter, like liquid fire traveling upward, causing violent sneezing, coughing, and spasms. But the healer whispers softly, assuring the patient that this agony is the path to clarity. For more severe issues, say, a deep infection or blockage in the urinary tract, The ancient Indian texts recommended the use of surgical tools, meticulously documented in the Sushruta Samhita, a medical compendium written over 2,000 years ago. Here we find harrowing procedures for removing bladder stones, described step by step with a poet's precision. The insertion of a curved metal catheter into the urethra, guided by touch and intuition, then followed by slicing through the perineum to reach the stone. The patient, likely tied down or held, screamed until the pain crested and then vanished into unconsciousness. There were no anesthetics beyond perhaps a heavy wine or the numbing latex of certain plants. But pain was considered temporary, a necessary part of purification. Again, imagine the slow drip of antiseptic herbs into an open wound, the healer's calm voice, the chanting of mantras for strength, and the cool compress of sandalwood applied after the flesh had been cut. Pain and prayer coexisted, and in this world, medicine was a holy discipline, guarded by tradition, taught from teacher to student in rhythmic verses. The Sushruta Samhita also details the use of cauterization, heated metal rods pressed directly to the skin or organs to stop bleeding, kill infection, or realign bodily energies. The sizzling sound would fill the room, followed by the smell of charred skin, mingling with camphor and turmeric. Sometimes, to heal stubborn wounds or abscesses, sharp instruments were used to scrape away dead flesh, a process called excruciating, where threads coated in alkaline plant paste were tied around tissue until it slowly, over days, died and fell away. It was excruciating and slow, but it worked. Ayurvedic dentistry also existed. In the absence of modern drills, rotted teeth were burned out using hot sticks or pulled with primitive forceps. Sudden, cracking pain followed by deep silence. Still, nature played a powerful role. Patients were wrapped in warm leaves, bathed in moonlight, fed ghee and honey as medicine. The treatments could be brutal, but they were never cruel. They were delivered with deep intent, with chants and ritual. The healer wasn't just a practitioner, but a spiritual guide. Treatments were holistic. For a persistent fever, the patient might be bled, purged, vomited, then massaged with rose oil and taught meditative breathing. Pain, in this system, was a passage, not something to be feared, but something to be endured with dignity and purpose. Again, imagine lying beneath a thatched roof in the monsoon season, with rain tapping a rhythm on the palm, leaves above, as a healer crushes herbs in a stone mortar beside you. The world is simple: water, earth, body, spirit. Perhaps you've never known such discomfort, but perhaps, too, you've never felt so cared for. The ancient Indians saw no separation between healing and harmony. The body was a temple, and every painful treatment was, in essence, an act of renovation. And now, as you sit with these thoughts, let the warm weight of this history settle gently on your chest. Inhale slowly. Feel the air pass through your own temple, your own breath, and exhale into the quiet. You're safe now. Let the fire of old pain fade, like smoke curling toward the night sky. Now, gently, as if floating on the wings of a dusk breeze, we drift farther east, toward ancient China, where the roots of traditional Chinese medicine run deeper than memory, and where pain, though feared, was often embraced as a balancing force, not a punishment. Here, along candlelit corridors of bamboo-walled homes, the physician was both healer and philosopher, trained to observe not just the body but the energy that flowed through it. Qi, that unseen life force, said to run in delicate rivers beneath the skin. And so, imagine now a patient lying still, face turned skyward, as acupuncture needles, long, fine, almost hair-thin, are slid into the skin. But these were not always gentle pinpricks for relaxation as we know them today. In earlier centuries, 9 classical needles were used, some thick, some shaped like spades, and others like arrows. Pain was expected. Certain points were stimulated to induce convulsions, others to provoke crying or even vomiting. Methods believed to push stagnant energies out of the body. Picture a healer in a long hemp robe, carefully inserting a large bladed needle deep into a swollen joint or tapping one into the top of the skull, whispering softly about restoring harmony to the spirit while the patient clenched their jaw. In cases of extreme imbalance, fire cupping would follow, glass or ceramic cups, heated until scorching, placed against the skin to create suction, pulling blood and energy to the surface in large, painful welts. The sensation, a deep, aching drag across the back or limbs. The marks might linger for days, but in the healer's eyes, they were signs of renewal. For certain fevers or mental disturbances, treatments like moxibustion were used, burning dried mugwort directly on the skin or just above it, until the warmth penetrated the bones. Sometimes the heat was so intense that it caused blistering. Yet patients sat still, breathing in the bitter scent, eyes closed, trusting the ritual, trusting the lineage. And then there was bloodletting. Yes, even in China, where it was often used in tandem with other treatments. Knives, needles, and even sharpened animal bones were employed to open small veins, particularly around the forehead or neck, to release evil wind or stagnant fire. Again, not in haste, but in ceremony, each drop believed to carry illness away. And if the body suffered from unseen spirits or internal madness, herbal purging was prescribed. Bitter roots and bark mixed in a thick, earthy bruise, consumed to trigger vomiting, diarrhea, sweats, violent upheaval that left the body drained and the soul, hopefully, cleansed. Picture this: a quiet mountain village, a patient hunched over in the cold, retching beneath a tree while a healer chants softly nearby, counting breaths, listening for omens in the sound of wind or the shape of clouds. And yes, for dental pain, sharp bamboo slivers or heated wires were inserted into decaying teeth, sometimes followed by extraction, done by hand or with carved tools, no numbing, just pressure and prayer. The screams, though real, were part of the process. But pain, in this ancient world, wasn't merely physical. It was spiritual tension manifesting in flesh. Again, imagine the soft tapping of a needle on bone, the smell of scorched mugwort, the distant drumming of rain on rice paper screens, and the knowing eyes of an elder who has seen hundreds of bodies healed, each through the patient navigation of discomfort. In these treatments, there was suffering, yes, but also surrender. In this land of balance and contradiction, fire was used to calm, needles to restore peace, and agony to offer renewal. And so now, as you lie beneath your own blankets, consider how far we've come, and yet how much we still seek harmony within. Let your breath slow, feel it glide along your ribs like the quiet rivers of chi beneath the skin, and allow your thoughts to dissolve, like incense fading into the folds of ancient silk. And now, my fellow traveler, as our long journey through the corridors of ancient pain draws to a close, let us wander one last time into the quiet shadows of history. Not to recoil from what we've seen, but to understand it, to hold it gently in the cradle of our thoughts as the night deepens. For all these painful treatments, these rituals of blood, bone, and bravery were born not from cruelty, but from an earnest, desperate desire to heal. Picture again the flicker of torchlight on temple walls, the rustle of linen bandages, the soft chant of a healer's breath as they hovered over a patient gripped by fever or fear. These were not sterile places filled with machines and monitors. They were woven from human touch and hope, from herbs crushed between fingertips and prayers whispered beneath the stars. We've wandered through the searing heat of cauterization, the agony of trepanning, the primitive alignment of fractured bones with no relief but the bite of a cloth and a firm hand to hold. We've seen the fire cups, the scarlet leeches, the needles pressed into sacred meridians, and the bitter potions brewed to purge demons or restore the delicate dance of balance within. Again, imagine those who endured, not kings and warriors alone, but mothers clutching at pain, children blinking through tears, elders resigned to the sting for a chance at another day. And beside them, always someone trying to help in the only way they knew how. Have you ever wondered, in the quiet stillness of your own pain, how many souls before you have endured and emerged, not just through strength, but through surrender? And so here we are, centuries and continents later, beneath softer lights and quieter lives, yet still seeking comfort, still reaching out in the dark. Let your thoughts now drift back through the moments we've shared. The smell of burning herbs, the sting of stone against skin, the soft tread of healers crossing reed-covered floors, until all those images blur like candle smoke against midnight. Because in the end, though pain was once loud, crude, and merciless, it was always followed by rest, by healing, by hope. Let that be your closing thought tonight, that even in the most painful chapters of our past, there was still gentleness woven between the wounds. Now, my friend, let your breath fall into a slower rhythm. Let your limbs grow heavier with peace. Let your mind step back from the ancient world and return home, soft and soothed. The moon still hangs in the sky above, as it always has, watching over the sleeping and the waking, the past and the present. I'll be right here whenever you need to walk these long, quiet corridors again. Now let your thoughts wander. I'll see you in another timeline. Good night.